Hey, hey.
Hey Nicholas, how you doing?
Doing good and you?
Oh, doing well, doing well.
Yeah, we're just running through the gym routine and yeah, it's running around a bit.
Shame. Yeah, I'm still catching up on work. It's been a day.
For sure, yeah. Get that invite. Zoom butchered the meeting link for everyone. I don't know.
Oh no, now you have to fix it.
Yeah, but it's fine.
I was freaking out a little bit because I didn't have a link. So I was like, where do I go? And then Anthea saved me.
Yeah, I told Andy I would send it just now.
Okay, cool.
Post it to post Twitter. So yeah, we run this a bit casually, like, hey, how you doing? We're gonna have a speaker. We're gonna do some raffling. Here's a form, that type of thing. We're not overly fancy here.
That's good to know because this is my first time I'm doing this. So I'm
Oh,
probably
really?
going to be I'm probably going to be very stiff and
Yeah,
very, very speechy, but
that's fine.
I'll try to make it as relatable as possible.
All good. I mean, yeah, what we've found, especially with the online meetups and generally even with the live ones, was keeping things short helped a lot. Because we like back in the day when the previous organizer used to be like 2 talks, half an hour, 45 minutes each. And like after the first one, people were just done. Especially when you start in the evening like this, because it's the only time where everyone's available because everyone finishes at 5 or 6 or whatever.
Exactly. No, when she said it was a quick chat, I was like, oh yeah, cool. And then I struggled to keep it below 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you start talking and then you're just talking and for talking. You're not even really making a solid point. So no, I agree. I like fast talks as well. It must actually be punchy, get to the point, give me information, and I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully I'll get that right.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Posting the link everywhere.
Nice. How many? I see you guys have had a few of these meetups, but obviously COVID has kind of also slowed things down a little, right?
Yeah. So yeah, basically I took over PHP Cape Town from the previous guy who ran that because he moved to London and then he just disappeared out of the South African tech community entirely. He's not even on Slack anymore. And then after the first event, we had like one or two, I think it was like a 1 or 2 in-person events max, and then lockdowns hit. So the rest of them have just been online anyway. And then I approached the PHP Joburg guys to merge and just make one PHP South Africa because we're both doing online. So why should we double our efforts?
No, definitely. I was actually I'm sad to say this, but I didn't know about the community until I was asked to do this. Because obviously I speak to developers all day, every day, but I'm not really clued into all the communities of the different languages and different spaces. So
yeah,
it's been an education.
There's a few, although for South Africa specifically, Zero Tech is the biggest, and it's yeah, it's the one with everything going on.
Yeah, interesting.
I got all the slides with the JetBrains logo down. And there we go. That's super weird. My slide has kind of died.
Oh no.
Oh, it's probably.
Evening.
Hey, there we go.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm
I'm
right,
doing
thanks.
well.
If either of you want to practice around with any screen sharing you want to do, you're welcome to do so now. It should be available.
Let me try quickly. Is it working?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. There we go. It's working. And they had to train me because I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Okay, can I try?
Go for it.
Oh, there's just amazing. All right, I can't see anything.
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, there should be like a little border around your window, and if you put your mouse to the top middle of the screen, you'll see a little zoom drop down.
Yeah, I've got that. There's no border on the screen, but it's fine. Okay, and the click. Cool.
Yes, sorted. Zoom seems to think I keep trying to minimize it because every time someone stops screen sharing, it's like you cannot minimize while recording. And there. Oh, this weird. Brendan's here.
Is it Melishia?
Yeah.
Okay, Melishia, what you must do is when you finish, you must look back at the video. When you're playing with those Zoom automatic backgrounds and you drink a glass of water, it goes really funky. So you must check back on the video. It's really cool. Yeah, it all just goes on.
Yeah.
It happened to me in a meeting. In a meeting the other day, we were in a team meeting with another company, and they've got all these Zoom backgrounds, and they did this, and I was like, "What on earth just happened?" And it was really odd.
Oh my gosh. We also, obviously, the talent advisor team, to entertain ourselves when we're in the Zoom room, kind of play around with the filters and stuff.
Okay.
And the one guy had a beard, and his beard went all like the galaxy was his beard. And we were just like freaked out, all of us.
It's so cool.
But I thought I'd where's OfferZen? Like I do the OfferZen background, you know, support the company.
And mind me, I'm just testing all the forms work. Form, swag form. All right. I see all the regulars starting to join. Brendan, welcome. Philip, Godwin, Rian.
Nick, is there a chance that when you start, people can just throw in the chat how long they've been a developer? Is that something we can do?
Yeah, you can ask them as soon as we start, yeah.
All right, cool.
Or we can do it as part of your talk and be more fitting.
Yeah, that's cool.
Hey,
Good
Dirk.
evening, everybody.
Hey, how
How's
you
it,
doing?
Nick?
Yeah.
And you?
Yeah,
You
surviving.
know, I might have to run out just before 8 o'clock to go and switch on the generator.
I got a load sitting outside.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm lucky with my schedule tonight.
I'm also not so lucky. At 8, everything will be going dark. Sorry.
Where are you based?
I am in a small town called Porterville in the Western
Okay.
Cape.
Okay, Portable, yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
Perks of working remotely.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I've stuck around
It's
the
just-
city during remote.
That's just bizarre because you live next to a massive wind farm.
I know. It breaks
That's
my
gotta
brain.
hurt.
It does. It absolutely does.
I'm in St. Helena. We've got the same thing. We've got 2 massive wind farms, one in Hopefield and one just outside town. No.
I'm literally like, when we drive past any of those, I always ask my fiance, like, where does the energy go? Does Eskom just like cut them off? Like, are they just beautiful things that stand there?
No, it goes into the grid and gets used by other people.
How do you become one of those people? Sign me up.
They make you pay
Cape exit.
ridiculous licenses.
Yeah, you gotta have that dough though. So
You know, my favorite theme of the day is Cape exit, Cape independence, wherever I go.
my parents are literally like advocating for it. They would just like, and then we'll come and live in the Western Cape. I would be interested to know how many joining have been on OfferZen or know of OfferZen, used it. That would be so cool to know.
Yeah. A lot of the people here, I'm guessing a good chunk is from Meetup, but a lot of people also from ZX specifically. And obviously OfferZen is pretty well known there. I think we'll wait for a few more people. We've got quite a few tonight.
Well, according to the meetup, I think there was like 40 people that said they'll be joining tonight.
Yeah, what we tend to notice is we get about half the attendees that RSVP to Meetup. Although these days is a bit less. Total attendees, I think, is about the same, but people come in and out. Yeah, quite a few people joined all of a sudden. Hey, Tim. Get a haircut there. Yeah, you're muted. I'm growing mine out, by the way.
Why?
Found an old
No, but
video. I found an old
Mhm.
video where I had like super nice curls because grit genetics, and I'm like, I'll try it again.
No, mine gets the point and then it gets irritating and it's like, no, okay, it's time.
Yeah, no,
How's everyone doing?
got quite the house match. Yeah, you're doing well. Yeah.
But a lot of people joined, so I'm hoping there was be a turnout tonight. But it's winter, which
Yeah.
tends to also.
So between organizers and OfferZen peeps, I think we've got 12 attendees, not including organizers, speakers, and OfferZen.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Sometimes, Brad is joining us tonight.
That is amazing.
Is he?
Oh, I thought you were saying, did I know that he was?
Yeah. Do you know?
I have literally no idea. I'll poke him on WhatsApp and say,
Yeah, I mean, good time. Give it 3 minutes and then we'll go.
well, he has the link and he's been reminded.
I'm glad to see more people joining. Welcome.
Gentoo. You guys are welcome to join in the video and chat if you guys want. Anybody doing anything exciting at the moment?
Sounds like we're all starting to cozy up for the winter.
I think I've been playing around with recently. WebSockets, but that's not that exciting.
I've been playing with drag and drop, which for a backend developer is exciting.
Okay, you using the front end libraries? What's it?
The HTML, the ones that come with standard with the browsers. What is it? I don't know. I've just started it. Oh, you just put in the tag. You put draggable.
Oh,
then,
I didn't
yeah,
know
yeah.
that's actually available now on the browser. Like always, there was a Dragula, I think was the one I always used to use.
No. It's standard in the. I think it's
Okay, no, that's good.
browsers now. Yeah.
Good to know, because that
So
was
you could
a
put
mission
draggable
sometimes.
in there, and it links into JavaScript. There's about 4 or 5 JavaScript events that that fire off that, and then yeah. So, but I'm not very good at front end stuff. So for me, it's like it's a fresh thing for me.
Are you using any of the frameworks? Or are you just using native?
No, you mean for the drag and drop? No, I'm just
I've
just started using the native.
Okay, so just
Yeah, I've just I've just gone on and found it and was like, okay, that looks
Okay, cool.
doable, and we're giving it a bash. So yeah,
It's good to know, because I know something I was doing and using some of the libraries was a bit of a mission.
yeah.
It was the so I'm trying to think what the library was. It was it's one of the Angular ones. Can't
No.
blank.
No, it's just part of the browsers. I think I've been learning about it in MDN docs. The MDN docs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just where I've been getting the resources from.
Oh, awesome. Post in the channels. Tell us how you're going. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
What you do.
Unfortunately, it's a side project, so it kind of it's not my main work. So it's just when I've got the time.
Oh, good. I think we
Do
have
anything exciting with it, or are you just playing?
No, I'm building my own website, and it's in my back office where I need to build a category manager so you can drag and drop categories around and build them up. So no, I'm doing it and meaning it, but it's still very fresh for me.
Okay, cool. That's fun playing with new stuff.
Always.
So I think no, I haven't touched anything new in a while. I've been fighting Django. Laravel's so much better. Sad. If anybody gets told that Django's better than Laravel, they're wrong. I can attest and tell you why. It's not bad. It's just it's different. The audit documentation though is pretty good. It's one thing Django does well. Yeah, it's the documentation. Like I found a lot of the Python docs are not as good. I think because the Laravel docs are so great, it's forced everyone who writes libraries to be good with the documentation. So that's the one big thing is the documentation. And just the fact that like with Laravel, so much just comes built in. So if the cron's built in, the queue manager's built in. What are the things it's doing? Like mailing via the queue manager is built in. Like settings are split by default.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. So it seems my mic just died magically while I was
I assumed that you were talking to someone off camera, and
no.
otherwise I would have waved and told you.
I was trying to say let's start for like 3 times and nobody's hearing me. So I'm like, okay, probably mic died. It happens. Yeah, let me know if it's too loud or anything.
Cool.
All right.
We'll mute and turn video off.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, the recording's on, all that. Welcome everyone to our end of May event for PHP South Africa 2022. For this one, we're doing a bit of a talk format again, which we haven't done in like the last 3 meetups or something. We were like, oh, cool, let's just chat a bit. But now let's get some talk back in the mix. So, yeah, I should share my slides because I just have some slides. Yeah, welcome. Just a little bit of housekeeping, then we'll have the talks. And thanks for joining bit, which will be the raffle and yeah, any reminders we need to do. So just some housekeeping. Where to find us? We got Twitter, we got Meetup, we're on ZATech. If you don't know what this is, please go here. Community site, community Slack group, very active there. phpsouthafrica.org for the website. The YouTube channel, which needs a bit of TLC, but we'll get there. And don't miss out, we have 1 license raffle away and attendee and speaker swag from OfferZen. OfferZen being now our official sponsor, which I don't think we've announced it properly. So welcome to Anthony and Melishia from OfferZen. So our 2 talks for the evening are basically is PHP legacy language and what's it like returning to software after quite a few years. And yeah, without further ado, I leave the floor to Melishia. I will put, by the way, I will post any links for raffles, etc. in the chat before I forget. Sorry.
Cool. Let me share my screen. Give me a sec. Nice. Cool. All right, so good evening all. I am super excited to be here and to chat to you guys about a really hot topic. You all will feel very strongly about this, but I'm excited to help you guys reinforce the pushback against the myths that stick to the reputation of PHP. Just a little bit of background. I'm a talent advisor at OfferZen. If you haven't used OfferZen before, I am the person you speak to when getting your profile ready to go live and be visible to companies. I am there to support and guide, but mainly I'm a cheerleader for helping you get a great job. I've been in the recruitment industry for over 4 years now, and working in the tech space specifically for over a year. Our agenda for tonight, I'm just going to start off with PHP the myth. These are things that I hear as a talent advisor that I'll just be touching on. PHP the legend, I'm going to be identifying the legends that started the bad reputation of PHP. And then PHP the reality, I'll be talking about the facts and data supporting that PHP is not dead, and then what that means to you as the developer. So as a talent advisor at OfferZen, the word I probably hear the most is the word growth. It is a fundamental part of being a developer. You want to be at the forefront of development, working with the latest tech. I mean, the first question I was asked is, what are you busy with? What's new when we came into the Zoom room? But in conversation with developers, PHP sometimes comes as an afterthought, and also the language that was left behind. And the biggest reason I've come across is that maintaining a legacy code base is really not fun, apparently. not being able to work on new things is kind of draining to a developer. So the only solution seems to be to learn a new mainstream language to seem more marketable. I even had a conversation with a senior PHP/Laravel developer quite recently, and he was so worried about going onto the platform and not receiving any interview requests because he doesn't code in any other language. And this is kind of a common thing that I hear. So to understand why PHP devs had these concerns, I did some research, and this is what I found. So the legend of Rasmus Lerdoff, the creator of PHP, was quite an interesting one for me. I mean, he never intended PHP to be a language, which kind of blows my mind. He wrote code to help him solve his own problems. So he didn't put any fail-safes in, he didn't restrict anything, and he created this very user-friendly language, but that was amazing because it was so super flexible, and you could create so much things like out of thin air, basically. Well, that's what it sounds like. Now the legends continue saying that PHP is this old man holding on for dear life. And because it's like over 20 years old, it only brings with it a lot of legacy code that is big and bulky and requires major maintenance. But the reality is far from the legends though, and here are some reasons why. So first of all, the days of PHP5 are over. It's true that PHP was not like improved on for a very long time. I mean, I found out PHP6 even got lost in the midst of things. It just never happened. So I understand why people have this sentiment, but it has quadrupled in performance. It's literally a night and day difference. Am I right? OfferZen created the Laravel Origins documentary that started the conversation around how Laravel came to life. And now that it's the most used framework for PHP, this then turned into a video called PHP Isn't Dead, which actually featured the Laravel Origins cast. I've taken some great insights from that video that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So with all the new features being added, you can make a very modern application. It looks like any modern technology or mainstream technology out there. So solid software development is now possible in PHP. It's also growing, and the core team seems to be very good at managing changes made to the language and bringing in new ideas. It has these people who constantly want to improve and make the language better. Jeffrey Wade, the creator of Laracast, even talked about the things PHP has going for it. He mentioned the gigantic user base, such as Laravel and Composer, and also hinted to the fact that PHP is just dominating the web. And I read that it has like 80% of the internet's websites are written using PHP and WordPress, and that just blew my mind. The next thing that really stood out for me was just how passionate the community is. Jess Archer, who is a Laravel core team member, said a few things that also resonated. She said she admits that PHP has its quirks, but she prefers it nonetheless. It isn't for everybody, but it's the best language for her. And I like that. I like that you can decide that this works for you. It gets the thing done. You achieve what you want to achieve, and even your clients are happy with what you create. So I'm like, just don't be pulled into the debate. Now that I have cemented the reality for you, and we all know and agree on all of these points, let's look at some data and facts that back up everything I've said in the OfferZen marketplace. Okay, so this graph comes straight from our State of the Developer Nation report of 2022 to help you understand your worth in the market. So you'll see that the average salaries for an entry-level PHP developer in South Africa start at about 20,000 Rand, which across all the other languages seems to be the starting point for young developers. But what's cool is within the first 2 years of professionally working with PHP language, you can expect an increase of about 13.9%. It's also cool to see that the biggest and most significant pay increase comes at the mid-career level, which is about 4 to 6 years of experience, and that is a 40.3% increase. So what I want you to take from this graph is to really understand, based on your years of experience, where should you be on average in terms of your salary, and negotiate towards that salary. Don't just accept what is given to you, but really know what your worth is in the market. I really recommend reading the State of the Developer Nation report, by the way. I also went to our marketplace insight squad and asked for some really good data to talk about our demand for PHP developers. And one of the really interesting things that came up is that we have a 93% request rate for PHP developers. That means of all the developers visible to companies on our list, 93% get reached out to, which is really one of the highest request rates. And then based on our overall placement rate, PHP actually outperforms .NET and Java engineers, meaning that we have placed more PHP developers this year compared to those languages. I bet you didn't think that. So this is a really cool quote that comes from the same PHP Isn't Dead video. Mohammed said is actually is the first Laravel employee. And he said, when people say PHP is dead, it's like saying English is dead or Spanish is dead. There's no dead language if somebody is using it. And PHP is used by millions of developers around the world. The entire web is built on PHP. Over the last few years, it's evolved a lot with applications for big data, cloud solutions, etc. I really like this because it does give you kind of insights into some of the big things happening in the developer space. So all in all, what does this mean for you? If PHP is your language of choice, become part of the community, advocate for it, and use the new frameworks and tools to your advantage. I say don't argue with the naysayers. They obviously don't know what you're busy doing, and they don't know how great PHP is. The other big thing is to keep building great stuff and take on the legacy code and make it useful again. If it's not your preferred language, that's also cool. No judgment. Learn a new language and keep growing. That's also fine. At OfferZen, though, we advocate for your career choice, and we'll be here to support you no matter what language you use. So if you're ready to make a change in your career, please go visit our website and create a profile. Here is a QR code to the YouTube video I was referring to. It's very insightful, and I recommend you go give it a look. Thanks so much, guys.
Right on. I actually did find that very surprising that PHP developers get the most offer rate, I think was the stat, or you worded it a bit differently.
Our placement rate, that is really insane, really insane.
Yeah, like PHP, it's always seemed like a big market, but everything else always felt a bit hotter. But yeah, that was fascinating.
Absolutely, and for me as a talent advisor, sometimes you just accept it because the developers are telling you these things. So it was kind of great to now know when I speak to a PHP developer to say like, no, actually, you are also a hot topic. Believe in yourself and be able to actually pump them up a bit by saying these actual data, give them this data.
Right on. Awesome stuff. Well, you heard it. There was the QR code for the video. Otherwise, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube search for PHP Embed by OfferZen. And there was that Laravel documentary. We did an event for that as well. That was pretty fun. Got all the stickers. I put one on my car because I didn't realize how big they were. They're like huge. Yeah. So yeah, awesome. Just checking everything. Wow. Next up, we have Chris Higham talking to us about coming back to software development. I'm just going to say welcome back.
Thanks. So my name's Chris Higham, and it's just an English.
Yeah.
No worries. Everyone gets it wrong. And when I spell it, I actually say Higham because it's easier for me. Yeah, I would really love it if everyone could just throw in the chat how many years you've been a developer. So if I'm just trying to kind of gauge the audience, just to see where I am, just so I can kind of understand how we can pitch. So if everyone can just like throw in there, I'm gonna. Okay, thanks. I can see them all starting to fly up. Right. Sure. Okay, so it looks like most of you are way ahead of the game than I am. So I hope that you do get some joy out of tonight. I'm still seeing stuff coming through. All right, I'm gonna kick off. Sorry, I just need to do some sharing. So just give me a moment to do that. All right, that's that. Thank you. I'm on a call.
How's a big speech going?
No.
And
Sorry, apologies for my son.
bye, Daddy.
My goodness me. Right. Can you all see that? Can I just like get it? Is that all right? Okay. Apologies for my son coming in. It's one of the joys of working from home. So I apologize. And I just need one more thing up. All right, here we go. Okay. So I'm a developer. I've been kind of going for 2 years now. And the reason I wanted to do this was because the first 3 months of what I was doing it was a disaster. It really was. I remembered every day going home to my wife and going, man, I'm useless. This is just dreadful. It's just, and I just really wanted to do this as a kind of encouragement, but to look at it both sides. I see we've got a more kind of mature audience today, so I'll try and also touch on that. But just kind of what it's like when you're a junior developer, or because I'm a junior developer. I may have grey hair, but effectively I'm still kind of a junior developer. And what it's like to kind of go through that process and try and help understand all that goes. So first of all, disclaimer, this is a personal journey. So this is not a research peer-reviewed thing, okay? These are just my personal journey and my personal observations on how it goes, all right? So I am actually a mechanical engineer by training. I worked as an engineer until 99. During that job time, I did MS Access data analysis on one of the aluminium lines we were running. And I was like, oh, this is really nice. I enjoyed it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do a career change. So I dropped off and did a 6-month course, which was like a programming course in COBOL at the time, which was interesting. And when I exited that, the development industry in South Africa was very dead, it seemed. So I actually then moved off and went to London, where I very luckily got myself a training job with Shell Marine Products, where I did some training and did some work for them. And most of my work was around an Access Oracle database interface. So I had a map, an Access database, which somehow they had got key business logic in and business data, and I had to map it into an Oracle database for a daily feed. Did some small Visual Basic projects and also did some Active Directory implementation then. And then I left that and I actually went and taught at a high school in Northern KwaZulu-Natal for 5 years. During that time, I did a bit of kind of Linux computers, but at the time, Linux was a complete mystery to me. I worked for a nonprofit organization that was an income generating thing, doing embroidery. And in actual fact, during that time is when I self-taught myself PHP, and I actually built a PHP stock control program for them, which I then loaded on a server that kind of tried to modernize what they were doing and tried to streamline some of the processes there. When we moved to Cape Town, I did the bookkeeping for my wife's business that she started up. And in that time, I also then did toy modification, and that's going to become important in a little bit later. We worked with eye tracker systems for disabled kids. And then I also dabbled in game engines. So at the time it was Construct 2, and then also 3D Rad, and did some game development there. Then I joined Code Infinity in 2020, literally like a week before the lockdown started. And I've now been with Code Infinity for just over 2 years. And nowadays I mostly work in Magento and I work in Tina 4, which is a PHP framework. So when I started, one of the huge things was just the absolute volume of stuff that you have to deal with, and all the names and all the terminologies. So if you put it in context, my development work when I was actually working with Shell was actually 3 years before Git was actually invented. So that kind of puts it in context how far away I am. And in those days, like, you could just do a PHP, you didn't need to know much, because there was literally this: PHP, HTML, JavaScript, CSS. And that was kind of what you would be able to use. So when I started, this was okay for me. But very quick, oops, sorry, wrong way. Very quickly, I was bashing into Flame Robin and Firebird. SQL was fine for me, but Firebird and Flame Robin was interesting. Then I had to deal with Ajax, jQuery, Bootstrap, data tables. Like, what are all these names? And it was just ongoing. APIs. I had an interesting discussion about routes versus routes. Postman, REST and SOAP, Virtualmin, and all the server stuff, PuTTY, SSH, FTP, hosts, Linux, CLI, Vim. And all these things basically were within my first 6 months. And then I had PHP Storm, I had Xdebug, I had a thing called Reportman I had to work with. And I've broken them into nice, neat little kind of sections. But at the time, it was just all coming in, like, just every day there was something new. It was like, oh, look at this, you've got to do that. Yeah, just take Bootstrap and throw it in, and so I was just lost. So it literally was 3 months of just doing it. And then for my real 3 favorites, Codeception is an absolute nightmare for me. I just never got the concept. Docker is voodoo, unless you know how to use it. And then Git is just the magnitude of what you can mess up with Git is just still terrifying to me these days. And so this picture kind of is really going through my first 6 months of my kind of return to development, where there are so many components that you have to deal with on a daily basis. None of them seem to link up to anything. None of them seem to make sense or fit into anything else. And when you try to move from one to the other, it's like you've got to be impaled by 1,000 daggers to make anything work. And so this was my kind of initial 6-month journey. And so the key thing is well, what is the takeaway? Because nowadays I'm involved in mentoring some of the, at Code Infinity, we take people who are not necessarily like university graduates. We'll take anybody who's showing an interest in development, often self-taught, or guys who've done like one boot camp and they're trying to get into the field. And we'll take them in and mentor them up and work on projects together. And so this is kind of the first 6 months. So the first thing, like, this is my kind of recommendations in terms of if you are new into the game, the first thing is just breathe. It's just, there's so much stuff coming at you. Just breathe and you're going to get there. Just take the time to just plod through each day and it slowly starts to make sense. The other one is persevere. We did a code review of a guy who was doing our code test probably 3 or 4 months back, and he did well. He actually had done relatively well. And then he said no, he backed out. He said, no, I don't feel like I'm ready enough, because there were maybe a couple of questions that were pointed towards work he'd done, or he was just feeling a bit out of his depth. And my advice is just persevere, just keep going, you know, it kind of comes out. The other one is be humble. There's nothing worse than somebody who thinks they know everything, and you don't. And it's probably, I'm kind of seeing it as I progress down my career now, is probably stay like that forever, because there's just so much stuff out there that you never know everything. And the last thing for me was always to be thankful, because somebody took a chance on me when I had very little credentials to my name, and gave me the opportunity and paid me out of their back pocket to just allow me to start. So that's the first part. The second thing is, I'd say invest in your craft. Is just, I took my first 6 months salary and I bought myself a laptop that would actually work. And I bought myself a PHP Storm license. That's just what I work on. There's no sponsorship here, and get a decent internet connection. And so if you're starting up, just if you've got the ability, just take your resources and plow them into decent kit. The next one was to do black box engineering. So this is the insides of one of those little singing toys that I modified. And this really got me the idea of black box engineering, where this little black box is actually all the clever circuitry that does all the movements, that does all the singing of the toy. But you don't have to know what happens there. You don't have to know what's going on inside. So all you've got to know is where these wires go and how you can interact with them to make modifications, to add an extra switch so that a kid can actually use them. And it's the same thing for a lot of the stuff we do. Just get to know what it does. So for example, there's a little piece of PHP code, and this is a sorting an array. You don't have to know what that sort function does. You don't have to know how it works. You don't have to dig into it. You just have to know it sorts an array. And start building all of your knowledge in those kind of little boxes, little black boxes that it doesn't matter what goes on inside. I put something in, I get something out, and start building your knowledge that way. Start building a framework of things, how things hang together. One of the biggest problems I always had was trying to understand how one part worked with another part. So I'd be working with Andre, and he'd be like, no, just, I'd explain the problem and go, oh yeah, okay. Don't get Bootstrap and it'll sort it out for you. And then I'm like, well, I don't even know what that is. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what problem it's even going to solve. So if you look at this picture, you'll actually understand that some things here don't make sense. But like if you follow the lady down, then the stairs make sense. And then all the things here, there's another stair and an archway. But if you follow the dude up to the ladder, suddenly everything flips around, or it does in my eyes. And all of a sudden things aren't quite the way that they seem. And the idea is just to start pulling it all together. Just start building the framework of how things all hang together. I've just come across this recently, which is working on a cross beam of or working on a T. So the idea here is that you know a lot. You know a little bit about a lot. That's the breadth of what you do, and then the depth, which is where you understand a lot about one or two things. And in these first 6 months, it was really handy, and I really recommend is that you work on this breadth. You just try and understand as much as you can about the environment in which you work. Then as you work on projects, this depth is actually going to just come naturally by itself. The other thing I've come to learn is that a framework is just like a different language. So if somebody says, yeah, I know PHP, and it's like, can you go work in, I've never worked in Laravel, so go work in Laravel or whatever, it's just like a brand new language, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that you have to learn. You have to learn how it hangs together. You have to learn all the different functions that are available. And so I've come to recognize that just because something's written in PHP doesn't mean you're going to understand it when you first hit it. Hence my introduction to Magento and how that went. So frameworks are just like different languages. So who's the person that you're working for? Who's the person that you're involved with? Sometimes they feel like this, where they are, you feel incredibly small, and you think that they're shouting when they maybe think that they're just giving you a little bit of friendly criticism. Sometimes it's like this, where the clock is ticking. But you really want someone like this as your mentor. You really want somebody who's just going to be there to try and be rough on you, try and help you to kind of find your best self, but it's going to kind of see you through. So for those of you, and this is a vast majority of you, who are dealing with new people in your organization, or maybe you've got somebody who you've taken under your wing, these are some thoughts from somebody who has just been through that journey, of maybe how you could do that better, or maybe you could pat yourself on the back and say, yeah, I do that. And the first one is breathe. People can be frustrating. You can't understand why they ask you the same questions 4 times. You don't understand why it's taken them like a week to build one HTML page. But just breathe, because they just don't get it like you do. Most people I saw somebody who's been in the business for 30 years, you've probably forgotten like more stuff than I've even learned yet. And when you hit those kind of people, when you kind of work with people like us, just persevere with us. There's so much that we are trying to assimilate, so many things we're trying to pull together. Be humble, I think, because there's still things that other people can teach you. So I was working the other day with somebody who's been in the industry a lot longer than myself, but I was able to teach them some stuff on Postman, not because I'm clever or anything, but just because I'd done a deep dive into some stuff on Postman, and I was able to help them out. And I think that's the thing across the industry, is there's so much stuff out there that it's always good to stay humble. The other thing is be thankful that you've got somebody who has decided to commit themselves to you. I know it might not always feel like that, but it does take something for people to commit to you. So hopefully you're thankful for the people that you have under you. Invest in their craft. Sometimes for people who are trying to join into this industry, they're often, depending on what level they're at, they're not getting paid very well, and they've got to either live and maybe consider financing. They're financing them a laptop or giving them a license, just to try and help them really get into that. And that helps us out as mentors, because what it does is it means that you're not going to be frustrated with them trying to use like Notepad to write PHP files. It's just gonna make your life as a mentor, it's just so much easier. So something to consider is maybe the financing of their stuff. the one thing with black box engineering is when you point someone to go and research something, maybe consider how you do that. So some of the stuff which is like, yeah, go and Google this, but you go and Google it and you don't have any framework on which to hang anything in. So you go and read something that says that this is a method to be scalable, and it just becomes blah, 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 because none of the terms, you've literally got to research every term. This is what your environment looks like when you're in your first 6 months. Everything's just these like rocks balancing precariously on everything else, and you're desperately trying to just hold on. So this is actually a far better way to do it. Is don't do the work, don't do the research, but give really clear bounds about what needs to be researched. So don't give clear bounds about where to look, what kind of thing you're looking for. Give the keywords, because sometimes you don't even know what to put into Google to try and understand what to search on. And so yeah, so black box engineering, but just try and help explain it a bit more. When you're doing the frameworks, try and help people build their frameworks. Try and, when you see that something's gone wrong, rather than trying to do the explanation, also try and work on the framework link. Try and get them to understand that that CSS works like this in relation to styling, or that PHP does this, and then the JavaScript will do that. To really try and just help people start building their frameworks. And once things start to come together like this, they become far more effective developers. I also think be careful of giving blank canvases. To try and create an artwork out of this is far harder than something like this, where if you give them a paint by numbers, it's so much easier for them to just start developing their skills, to start actually understanding how things fit together, how they can start getting to stuff. So depending on people's incoming skill levels, just treat them like a squirrel, where they just can't focus or build large kind of viewpoints, and just give small sequential tasks. Be able to get them to help them start building those frameworks. So 6 months, you've hit the wall at 6 months. Question is, do you still have your head? And I really think it's useful at this stage as a mentor and as somebody who's learning, is to actually take a really realistic assessment of the situation and decide, am I actually cut out for this or not? So we get to 6 months and we look at people and say, well, are they going to cut it? You know, they've had 6 months now. How much have they developed? Is this actually something that's going to work for them or not? And to be realistic, because to drag somebody past 6 months when the likelihood is that it's not going to work, it's cruel, it's painful. They just remain like they feel stupid all the time for another 6 months. And it's not easy. So yeah, I would have those tough discussions. And if you are a young developer, then approach your mentor and say, listen, is this working? You know, is this actually something I can do? And because likelihood is you'll still feel a bit out of your depth. You might still feel that things are not going. By now you should have your own tech. You should have set yourself up that you've actually got the tools to work appropriately. You should have taken some of those salary slips and you should have converted them into something that you can utilize. Because it does make a big difference in your development journey. By now you should also be understanding how to use black box, and I think that for me was a really useful thing. Some of the frameworks at the stage had started coming together. I started kind of piecing together. The day that I figured out how to use Xdebug and how it could influence my PHP storm was just mind-shattering and amazing. And you start to build the linkages, and you can start navigating through them. You also start developing depth in your framework. So there should be some kind of depth that's starting to form where you're kind of getting to the point where you know a little bit about something, and that you can start working on. The next phase for me was really a beautiful phase. That 6 months to 18 months, I really enjoyed it. It just was a wonderful time for me to get involved in, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. At that spare time, my headspace was just so much better. Things were starting to tie together. Things were starting to really come into play. Linkages were starting to form, like the background picture. And yeah, some of the black box stuff I was starting to get under the hood. I was working on Tina4 framework, and I was the first one to be using Firebird through it. And so I did a lot of, I had to get into the background and try and figure out why certain things weren't working and report bugs. And yeah, you start to gain the confidence to actually start digging under the hood and some of the black box stuff. I also tried to do things which were dream worthy. So, and please don't scoff at my dreams, because for me they were awesome. But there was a couple of times where I got to a point and I was like, you know what? I had to, the one project I had to do, I had to download all the country flags and put them on a website. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to go and sit and right click and download all the time. And so I thought about it and thought, you know what, with all the little bits of skill that I've got, I could probably scrape the Wikipedia website and pull down the flag. And it was a stretch for me at the time. You know, it was something really dream-worthy, because it was taking different parts of things that I'd learned, and now out of my own creativity, stitching them together to be able to then do that as an exercise and actually make it meaningful in terms of the job I was doing. And the day that I got that right, I was like, it was such a booster for me to go, I can actually do something. You know, I can actually now become creative and start doing things. And if you are new on your journey, I would encourage you, when you're getting to the stage, you know, don't just get stuck in the rut of doing your stuff. Try and tackle something a little bit outside your comfort zone, or try and make those linkages and say, well, if I could just take this and I could take that, I could actually build a rocket and fly me to the moon. Maybe start building some tools. It was the same thing. At some point, I got frustrated with Magento and never knowing which plugins were firing where. And I thought, well, I can just, Magento is so structured and rigid, I can just build myself the tools to go and find all the plugins. And that also, the day I got that working was for me a great booster, and it also challenges, because you've got to do different things, and it was a great challenge. You also start developing depth in numerous areas. So I tried to start developing not just depth in one line, but in one or two lines, and you start trying to branch out from the sides and really try and increase what one is doing. And try and, every time there was a new technology that I hadn't heard of before, I spend half an hour at my day, figure it out, try and figure out how it fits into my framework. One thing you do have to start doing is dealing with clients at this stage, and it has its own challenges and its own difficulties, especially if they are not tech focused. If you're dealing with marketing people or company directors who have their view of how life should work, and the tech should be magicians to make it work. I found this challenging, and I've had to get my head around it. Also, not having worked in corporate for 20, because I haven't worked in corporate for 20 years either, you know, trying to get back into that was a different mindset, and it's something that needs to be navigated. So as a mentor, as a Yoda in this time, what kind of things would be useful to try and work with younger developers? The one thing is try and push them some blank canvases. Try and say to them, hey, why don't you give this a bash? Just go and build this thing without much else, so that they've got to then actually find each step individually. Explore different paths of doing things. Instead of just doing a form submit to get data back, maybe get them to start working on Ajax or something dynamic, maybe doing some DOM manipulation to work with data really fast just on the front end alone. Maybe trying to include different languages or different frameworks to do different things on their side. So there's not one way to skin a cat. You could do things in numerous ways, trying to get them to explore it, because with that then comes the concept of trying to get them to understand architecture. For me, a server was a crazy thing that just gave me web pages. When I actually had to start working on them and trying to figure out how can I deal with these things, had a crazy bug once where we went from our local to a web server. All of a sudden there's this error because the way that the web server was dealing with it was different than my local web server. And to try and get the understanding of architecture to come into play, because it does matter. You can't just be a a PHP programmer. All the architecture does have a bearing on how things work. One of the things I find as I try and mentor people these days is trying to get people to understand how data flows through programs and what it actually means. So just going a step beyond the syntax of coding, to actually understanding what the data means to a business and being mindful of the data as it flows through a program. I find often, especially if people are coming out of boot camps where they've done tutorials or things just to extend their knowledge, this bit is missing a lot, where the actual using data and what it means to a business and how you're supposed to manipulate it is often missing. So 18 months, and this is what I looked like. I had this amazing framework where everything slots in place. I can clip and unplug things. It turns around, and that's just not true at all. The thing I came to realize is that if I look back on 2 years, it's amazing how far I've been able to come with the help of mentors that I've had, with the projects that I've been very fortunate to work on. But it's like walking all the way to Everest Base Camp. Get to Everest Base Camp is an 8-day walk just to get there. And then you still got to stare up at the mountain if you're even thinking of going that far. And that's how I kind of feel about the journey, is that it's good to look back and see how far one's come, but there's just so much more to go through that in actual fact, that idea of actually being at a point where I'm like, okay, I'm here now, I can go. I can't see myself ever reaching. There's always going to be something. Carry on. The one thing I also find is I'm finding that I've got to be really careful about falling into what I have self-penned as the proficiency trap, where you get to the point where you're able to do stuff, but you don't actually know enough to keep progressing, and you need to pay the bills, you need to get the projects done, but then you kind of just get stuck in the rut of the knowledge that you know, and to really try and force oneself to keep moving, to keep developing, to keep learning your craft, so that you don't just get in a trap of, I need to do this for the client, so I'll do it in the same old way that I've done it the last 2 years, and not actually developing and finding something new. So I also recommend trying to find yourself somebody you can mentor, because when you try and think about how do I teach someone, it also teaches you. And then also document something, because it's only when you start trying to actually document something to explain it to someone else that you really have to know it well. You have to know it ins and outs. And so if you pick up something and try and document it, it really helps you to develop your craft in the things that you do. So naturally, when you hit 2 years, you can just sit back on the beach, you can retire, you can have fun, and life is just plain and roses from there on out. And of course, that's not true. But yeah, I hope that the journey was useful for people. I see there's a little bit of time left if people want to ask questions or people want to share their own kind of ideas and things. But that's all I've got for you tonight.
Some stuff. Love it. I love the mentions of mentoring as well, especially, and I mentioned in the PHP channel on the Retic now that mentoring is a boost. So for you more juniors out there, definitely try and find a mentor, whether it's in the community or at your job or anywhere you can. And for more senior people, have a go at mentoring someone. Let's try and at least replace ourselves with one person in our career. So I would say at least try mentoring once. It doesn't have to be a long stint. I just came out of a 4-month stint, and it greatly helped the guy. Yeah, it's doing really well. Yeah. Any questions?
I've got one here actually. Chris, you mentioned you did Magento. Did you do any framework before Magento? And if so, what was the largest change going from that to Magento?
Sure. Is my mic still on? Let's see. Yeah, it is. I work in Tina 4. Tina 4 is a locally developed framework. It's a light framework. So I had accounting API in Tina 4 before I moved on to Magento. Magento is a very abstracted framework. So what it means is that you can never actually find a base. And a lot of the way it's built is it's built on how things are named. So, for example, how can I explain? Yeah, so certain things have got to be in certain places. And so if you don't know how that, it's not like just like a framework or PHP where you can just start writing the syntax and it works. And I mean, to write a Magento module, you have to create, I think, a minimum of 3 or 4 files just for the module to be accepted by the Magento end. And you've done nothing. You've done absolutely nothing. And I find that really hard. And I still find that hard because there's no, I really struggle to find any logical flow through on Magento. The other thing that was a bit strange is Magento's got what's called an EAV database, which once you know how it works, it's easy. But the initial time that I tried to go digging in the database, it was just a mystery. Magento also, there's so much in it, and I work on a very customized Magento system. So my Magento system is very customized, and that is really hard. So there's probably, on the Magento system we work on, it's probably about maybe 50 to 100 modules that have been built, and they are customized. So they're all custom built. And so there's just a lot of stuff going on. And yeah, and I still find it hard. I struggle with, I mean, some parts of it I've kind of learnt, and I feel like I'm comfortable. But if you come and ask me a question just slightly out of what I've been working on, man, it's all of a sudden it feels like I'm back at day one. And yeah, Magento's not easy. I'm fine, and I must confess, I don't jump into it with relish and enjoyment. I really don't.
Finding things is a big struggle.
Oh, man, and that was why I built that tool, to find the plugins, because I was actually having a piece of code that was firing, and I just didn't know where it was. Like, it was adding something onto the product afterwards. Couldn't find it, you know. And then I was like, I realized, well, there's a plugin firing and adding something on, but across 100 modules, it's really hard to find. So that I find is really tough. It's just trying to find stuff and trying to understand how you can find all the things that you need to find, and all the XML setup files is just crazy. But that was my point that I made earlier, is that a framework is like a different language. You know, just because you know PHP, jumping into Magento, you've got to literally start from scratch. Even, I mean, Tina 4 is a light framework. Even if you jump into Tina 4, there's a learning curve. You know, it's yes, there's PHP, but to try and start using the strength of Tina 4 and try and understand, well, how do I do a program flow? It's a learning curve.
All right. Any other questions for Chris?
No, I just want to throw in there what Chris was saying about learning curves. When I moved from CodeIgniter 3 to CodeIgniter 4, it was like changing frameworks completely, because they made CodeIgniter 4 7.2 was the minimum PHP level, whereas CodeIgniter 3 was still anything from 5 up to that point. And namespaces and all of these new features came in, and it was like something from scratch.
For the better, at least, I hope.
Oh yeah.
Awesome stuff. We'll do one last call for questions, and then we're going to look at raffling off that PHP Storm license. And remember to check out that attendee swag form as well. But there's no more questions. Well, Chris, thank you very much for that talk. I greatly enjoyed it, and seems quite a few other people enjoyed it as well.
You're welcome.
Okay. hope to see you at the next one. Now on to the final part of our evening, a raffle, a big raffle that I have a totally awesome process for. We have 13 responses to the raffle form. People who desperately want that PHP film license. Well, it's only for any JetBrains product, so yeah. And someone to do a bit of a drum roll. We've got a nice mic. Okay, well, let's imagine there was a drum roll. I was running the random number generator to find who will win this. And it is Kensley. Kensley, I will email you the license and you can redeem it for any product. Congratulations. I hope it'll serve you very well.
Thank you.
And meetup's pretty much at its conclusion. We leave this last portion open to speak. I'll stop the recording and all that. But thank you all for coming and enjoy the rest of your evenings if you don't decide to stick around.